Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. As always, I'm Labi, and I'm joined here by Jacob. Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Labi. How's everything with you?
Yeah, it's all good. Can't complain. Officially done with school, so we're relaxing for a little bit,
Yeah,
which
well
is
that makes
great.
one of us, man. I'm still going.
There you go. Uh, and that meant there was a lot of sports for me to watch at least, and a lot of stuff going on in the world of sports. And we're actually going to start by talking about a sport in which I don't think we've mentioned too much on this podcast, but last night was a very, I don't want to say an amazing, because it was great for good and for bad reasons, as I'm sure we'll get into. But the UFC card last night was, well, let's just say one of the most entertaining UFC cards that we've seen in a very long time. And so that's where we're going to start talking. Jacob, I know you're not the biggest UFC guy, but I understood you watched most of the fights last night.
Yep.
What did you think?
Oh man, none of the fights went past the second round. Most of them were knockouts, if not all of them. And one guy's leg looked like an envelope after you mail it. Like it was entertaining, like you said, in the good ways and the bad ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was definitely, I think, the shortest UFC card I've watched.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the past, if I want to watch like just like the main event or something, if you typically, get the stream up, definitely the legal stream. We're not illegally streaming anything over here. I don't know what you're talking about. Um, you pull the stream up, like 12:30, even like 1 o'clock, like 1 a.m., and you're normally pretty good. But like you said, because literally every single fight ended in the first or second round, it blew by, and all the fights were over before 12:30. But yeah, extremely entertaining. So yeah, the first fight, the guy who ended up losing was dominating the entire first round, and the end of the first round, he gets kicked in the leg, and like for whatever reason, and this is what I mean, it's crazy, like what the human body is capable of, but like he basically kicked him in like a nerve in his leg, just like the
Yeah.
nerve got affected somehow, and his foot just went numb, and you could see like he couldn't move his foot because like the nerve wasn't working, and it was ridiculous, and he was trying to like walk around, and he just couldn't walk on his foot.
Yeah, it was not pretty to watch. It was not, and it goes to show all it takes is one kick, one hit, one punch, and then you can completely lose everything. And it sucked because he was doing so well, and then that happened, and you're like, great, now what?
Yeah, he was doing so well, and then he wanted to keep fighting, but the doctor, it was a medical stoppage because the doctor looked at him and said, "Buddy, like you have one foot. Like I'm sorry, but you can't keep going on." And it was a really sad start to the night because you hate to see a guy losing that way where he's forced to stop versus if you get knocked out, you get knocked out, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and if people thought that that was going to be it for the injuries, well, you're very wrong, because in the next fight, 17 seconds in, Chris Weidman, his kick,
Uh.
throws a kick, and
Uh.
yeah, like if you didn't see it, I don't recommend watching it if you are, faint of heart, let's just say. Let's like, we don't know the official injury, but we've seen this happen, I think, like once or twice before in UFC, and the last time it happened, the guy's official injury was a broken tibia and fibia,
Fibula. Yeah.
which is the two like giant leg bones like in your lower leg, like two bones that should not break because they're literally the biggest and strongest bones in the body. And like you said,
Mm.
it looked like his leg was jello, I think is what you were describing when we were
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah. Like, for those who didn't watch it, basically, if you fold a paper 3 times over each other, that's what it looked like. It
Yeah,
was
what it looked like to me is if you guys have watched Harry Potter, it's that one scene where like Harry loses all the bones in his arm and it kind of just like flops.
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
it was like that with his leg, but in real life, which just it was very disturbing to watch.
It
And
was.
obviously, prayers up to Weidman. Hopefully, he can recover. He's having surgery today. Uh, yeah, it's like that kind of stuff. It's so rare when it happens, but when it does happen, you realize like just like you said, one kick, one punch, whatever, and it's crazy what can happen.
And to think that it was on like live TV and everyone had to see that live, like and it was a full house last night too for UFC. But oh my god, man, it was just it was awful to watch.
Yeah, it was great to see the fans back in the arena, and yeah, even the announcers. I thought they handled it pretty well, and the guy who won, like the other guy who was fighting who
Yeah,
didn't get his injured, he did a really professional job of doing the post game speech and saying hopefully he's okay, and I thought he handled it really well, and the announcers did too. They were basically like, look, we're gonna show you the replay twice. If you want to see it, you can see it. If you don't, look away. Like I thought they were very professional in handling it, and then they only showed the replay like literally 2 times just for people to see what happened, and then they never showed it again for the rest of the night, which is that's professional. You don't want to just you don't want to be putting that up for everyone to see over and over and over again, right?
yeah, and it's respectful for Weidman as well, who got injured. Like obviously it was bad, but I don't think he wants to be reminded or shown exactly how bad it was, right? Like he just wants to. It happened. It looked so painful. You got to move on, go get surgery, and hopefully your career is not over.
Yeah, I mean he's a former champion, so obviously, yeah, that's definitely not what you want to remember him by. You want to remember him as a champion. But like you said, hopefully he can return. I'm sure he'll be able to make a full recovery in terms of being able to live a normal life. But I mean he's already getting up there in his 30s. I think this has got to be it for him, and it really sucks if this is the way he ends his career. But sometimes that's just what happens.
Yeah. It,
Uh,
it, it happens. It's an injury. Like injuries happen all the time. It's just this one was gruesome and in front of like the entire world.
Yeah, that it was crazy. I can't even describe like my feeling watching it. Like he throws a kick and then he just falls down and you're like, "Wait, what's going on? He didn't get hit." And then everyone was freaking out. I'm like, "Oh no." And you just knew it was something bad.
Yeah. Like yeah, it was awful to watch. Oh my god.
But let's pivot to that's why it was entertaining for a bad reason. And then we get into all there were 3 title fights as well, and all of those were amazing for a good reason. We saw 3 really good fights, 3 really dominating performances, and 3 knockouts
Yeah.
that were unbelievable. First, Valentina Shevchenko, she retained her title at women's flyweight,
Yep.
and I know we've talked about Amanda Nunes on the podcast, and for those of you who don't know, Amanda Nunes is literally the most dominant female fighter in history, and I don't think that there's anyone who could beat her. Well, Shevchenko's the same for her weight class, where
Hmm.
I don't think there's anyone that can beat her, and she kept talking about it. She's like, if anyone wants to fight me, they can, and she literally said this in her post-fight press conference. She was like, if anyone wants to fight me, they can, but like, don't look for any of my don't look for weaknesses in me because I don't have any. And
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, I think the only person that can beat Shevchenko is Nunez, and the only person who can beat Nunez is Shevchenko.
Yeah.
They fought twice before. Nunez won both, but they went to like the first one was unanimous decision, the second one was split decision.
Yeah.
So neither person has knocked the other person out. I think it would like the only natural thing is that both of them fight a third time because I don't think anyone else can beat them. She absolutely like dummied her opponent in this fight.
Yeah. She took her out and she killed her. Like, obviously didn't kill her, but it was the first of many exciting and um, just awesome fights of the night for sure.
Yeah, and then it just kept going on from there because then we had the title fight at strawweight in the women's, and the new champion Rose Namajunas,
Rose,
Thug
let's go.
Rose, as she beats Zhang Wei Li. who was on a 21 fight win streak, snapped after a minute and 18 seconds.
Yeah,
Rose Namajunas with a kick to the face, knocked her straight out with a kick to the face. It was ridiculous.
it was.
And she becomes a new champion.
It was a great kick. My goodness, like you don't realize how athletic these people are until you see kicks like that. Like, holy crap! I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a great fight. I can't wait to see a knockout. Holy shit! I can't wait to see. Oh my god! I can't wait to watch that replay. Like it was like one of those where you just wanted to keep watching, even though it was over.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those oh shit moments when you saw it land
Yeah.
and you knew that it was over from there. And
Yeah.
yeah, congrats to her. She's the new strawweight champion.
Super super emotional in her post game. Her report after the game. You know, she worked so hard to get there, and a lot of people didn't really think she could do it, and she did, and good for her.
Yeah, she kept telling herself, like, walking into the ring, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best. And then, a minute and 18 seconds, she proved it.
Yeah, like that's all it takes. Sometimes you just have to tell yourself that you're the best for people to believe it. Because here's the thing with like sports is sometimes, and I've kind of felt this, like sometimes people turn their back on you and then they don't think you're the best. So then you're like, okay, I have to tell myself, and you stop believing it. So it's frustrating for sure. But good for her. She deserved it, and she absolutely destroyed her opponent.
Yeah, like you said, sometimes, if you're your own number one fan, if you still believe in yourself, that counts for so much, and that can be such an important factor. And then speaking of knockouts and champions, then in the main event, Usman versus Masvidal. Yeah, let's just say that people were giving Masvidal a chance, and he didn't really have one. Usman, to be fair to Masvidal, he had never been knocked out before in his entire career, 50 fights. He had never lost by knockout, and he got absolutely annihilated with a punch to the face and just collapsed. Usman, 19-1, he's still the welterweight champion. I mean, a lot of people are saying he's the most dominant fighter. Now that Khabib Nurmagomedov, I got there.
I think that's how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, has retired. A lot of people are saying that Usman is now like the most dominant fighter on the men's side. And I mean, with a record of 19-1, with the performance that he put up yesterday, I mean, it's hard to argue against it.
Yeah, it's hard. And man, he was smiling, eh? And I'm watching. I'm like, oh, I hope he knocks that smile off his face. And thank God he did. He was like someone you love to hate or hate to love. And he showed last night. I watched that smile, like acting arrogant and stuff like that, and then he gets knocked out like the way he did, and I was just like, sweet justice or something.
Yeah, Masvidal in a statement said he got overconfident.
Yeah,
I think you could say that.
a little understate. Honestly, that's probably an understatement. He probably thought he was going to win the fight, no problem, no problem. And then he gets knocked out, and he got knocked out like that and humiliated on TV. You can't do that in any type of sport. You cannot go in there and be arrogant, because if it comes back, you look like an idiot.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing about UFC. It's like, I guess every sport, but especially like one-on-one or like combat sports too, where like literally the difference between, like, sure, if you play like a hockey game, like it sucks when you lose, but when you lose in a fight, like you get knocked out, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot more stakes, in like a sport like UFC. And like you said, we're talking about how, like, Rose, she had that self-belief and that helped her. But there's also, like you said, a good balance between having that self-belief and being confident in yourself versus being overconfident and having that hurt you. And I think we saw that with Masvidal, where he was, I'm not going to say taunting him, because I don't think it was quite that far. But like you said, you saw him, like, he had his hands down, like smiling at him in the ring, and then like 2 minutes later he's lying on the floor knocked out. So it is tough. You have to find that balance between being confident in your abilities and believing in yourself, but not being too overconfident to the point where it hurts you. And I think like Conor McGregor's a perfect example of that. People loved his confidence when he was winning, but then when he was losing, people are like, okay, maybe this guy's getting a little too arrogant. And when he's fighting these guys who are as good as him, it's hurting his performance, right?
Yeah. Do you remember watching a fight years ago? I can't remember who it was, but the one guy kept like shimmy shaking and like taunting, and then he gets kicked to the face and knocked out. That's kind of I thought of that right away when I saw that. I'm like, maybe not to the extreme of he's like taunting like you said, but definitely to the point where I'm like, oh, I really want you to lose. Like, you're right. There's a difference between self confidence and arrogance. And Rose had confidence in herself, but Medvedev
Masvidal.
did not have confidence. He was just straight up arrogant, and it cost him probably the match.
Yeah. And then honestly, the best highlight of having the fans in the crowd was because Jake Paul was at the fight. Literally every 15 minutes, all you heard were 15,000 fans chanting "Fuck Jake Paul."
That was probably the highlight of the night. Did you see Joe Rogan's reaction to the knockouts?
Well, yeah, literally every single time they're all like, "Oh!" Yeah.
This guy was grabbing his. Oh, it was. He's a fun guy. He's a fun character for sure, Joe Rogan.
Yeah, no, like the UFC, like they do a really good job with their broadcasting and marketing. And I know we didn't talk about the Jake Paul fight last week because we rarely talk about combat sports to begin with, and we're not going to talk about it was just a bad, what's the word I'm looking for? It was like a bad show that they put on, like that Jake Paul fight, versus like the UFC have done do an incredible job with their like production and everything. Like the commentating is good, like the production is phenomenal. Like they know how to put on an event. And if you watch the Jake Paul fight last week, where they're like the camera work was bad, the commentators are like unhinged. Like it was entertaining in like a what weird. The fuck is this type of way?
Yeah.
Where like the UFC are entertaining and okay, this is how a sports event is supposed to go.
Yeah, it's professional because Jake Paul's not professional, but these guys and these women and men are very professional and they take their job very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like just the Jake Paul fight. Like Pete Davidson was one of the commentators.
Yeah,
and you could tell he just didn't want to be there, and he was talking shit about both of the fighters, like in the commentary booth as it was going on. It was so unhinged, but in an entertaining way if you didn't really care about it. But yeah, no, like you said, Rogan and Daniel Cormier, and I think it's John Anik is the other guy. Like yeah, they do a really good job. They know how to put on a show. But then again, like if they're like a $4 billion company or however much they're valued at now, like you hope that they'd be able to put on a good show.
And there's also a difference between being like stupid excited and being like genuinely pumped up. Like when guy got knocked out, they were like genuinely excited. Like there's no fakeness there. They're all like, "Holy crap, that was insane to watch."
Yeah, well, I mean, Cormier is a former UFC fighter, and Joe Rogan's been around the sport for years. So,
yeah.
Like you said, you can tell there's genuine interest. They're not just there to, like you said, they're not doing like a fake YouTube reaction video. Like they are genuinely, fans and love what they do. And like you said, it's very clear that that's the case because you can see that in the way that they do their commentary.
Yeah, and it goes to show if you love the sport, the fans watching are going to absolutely love it because you're so invested into it that they're going to be invested with you.
Oh, absolutely. They feed off of that. And you saw, like, once again, like getting COVID out of here. And we're not going to argue whether it was the right call to have the fans in the crowd. But obviously, it's better with the fans there. And you saw that for, like, everything was just heightened by, like, the fans being there and the reactions that they had.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, most of the people, if not everyone there, is probably vaccinated. So that's probably the only way they were allowed in. And yeah, like, we really forget how important fans are to a game. We really forget that, especially in Canada. When let's look at hockey, we've had no fans in the stadiums this entire season, but we forget that how crazy a game can change because of the fan and the atmosphere in there, especially with the playoffs coming up. Like, who knows if we're going to be able to have fans in there for that.
Absolutely, and I think that's a perfect place to pivot, talking about the importance of fans. Last week, at the end of last week's podcast, I briefly mentioned this Super League plan idea in for soccer in Europe, and of course, like usual, once the podcast came up, all shit broke loose
Yeah,
with
literally.
respect to the Super League. And basically, the last week has been ridiculous with news. And so I just want to quickly, explain what's going on with that, sort of what happened, why this is being discussed, and why I think it's bad.
This
So basically, for if people don't know, I'll try to explain it quickly, but also explain it. Imagining that people know nothing about sort of European soccer. So the way it works in Europe, it's not like North American sports where you have a league of however many teams and that's just the league. In European soccer, there's a pyramid. So there are different levels. And if you do badly, you move down, and that's called relegation, and if you do well, you move up, and that's called promotion. So theoretically, you could create a team with your friends, start in like the ninth division, and then as long as you keep winning, you can move up, move up, move up, move up, and move all the way up to the first division. Now, of course, that is never going to happen if it's just you and your friends playing, but we have seen teams move from like the fifth, sixth division all the way up as the team has grown and they've brought in better players and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what people love about the sport. It's you have to earn your spot in the league, and you have to earn your spot in the league every year. So in theory, a big team like a Manchester United or a Real Madrid, if they have a terrible season and finish last place, they would get kicked out of the league and move down a division. Now that's never going to happen because these teams have like the most money, they can get the best players, but it's theoretically possible. And then for something like the Champions League, it also works based on merit. So in the top leagues in the world, so England, Spain, Germany, Italy, etc., you have to finish in the top four to qualify for the Champions League. And especially now in England, where there are a lot more teams that are kind of challenging. Like this year, Leicester City and West Ham, who are traditionally not big teams, are in the top four spots. And so they're, if you talk to the big teams, they're stealing, even though they're not stealing because they're earning it by finishing that high, but they're stealing a Champions League spot from like a Manchester United or from like a Chelsea or like one of these big teams. And so obviously the teams feel threatened by that. And so the creation of this Super League was to have 12 teams go off and create their own league, and it was going to be a closed league. So essentially they want to create a league like the NFL, like the NBA, like the NHL in soccer in Europe, where there's a certain number of teams and they're guaranteed to play every year and they can't get kicked out of the league, and that's what they wanted to do. And I know that in North America that doesn't seem that bad, or that doesn't seem really negative, because we're used to that kind of sports, structure. That's what we're used to. That's how the leagues operate in North America. But in Europe, that's seen as like destruction of what the game, destruction of what they think soccer is all about, destruction of the fans who support this team. And so naturally, it was met with real harsh. People hated it. There were
yeah.
protests. People were marching to their stadiums and asking, to stop with this, and then obviously because soccer is a multi-billion-dollar industry on the money side, like UEFA and FIFA obviously didn't want these guys to break free. The individual leagues didn't want these teams to break free, and it created this huge sort of fight on all kinds of levels. And it took 2 or 3 days, but since then, 7 of the 12 teams that were supposed to join, including all 6 teams from England, have said that they made a mistake and they're not joining this league. And so that's kind of where we stand now. And the one thing I will say is, a lot of the teams that are breaking away, in particular Liverpool and Manchester United, they're owned by Americans.
Mhm.
So, for those of you who don't know, Manchester United is owned by the Glazer family, who own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Liverpool are owned by Fenway Sports Group. So Fenway is like Boston, like so the team that has like the Fenway Sports Group owns the Red Sox and potentially other teams in that area. I know the Red Sox for sure. And then also Arsenal are owned by Kroenke, and he's the owner of the Rams. He's the guy who bought the Rams when they were still in St. Louis and brought them to LA.
Right.
And so, the thing with American sports is relocation happens. We're used to it, right? That doesn't happen in England. That's unheard of. These soccer teams are supposed to be built around the community. And so a team like Arsenal had huge protests for this, and you can understand why when you think that their owner is a guy who relocated a football team from St. Louis to Los Angeles. If you're a fan of Arsenal and you look at that and you start to think, well, clearly it doesn't seem like he cares about the community. He only cares about the team. This is a team that's supposed to be built around the Arsenal community in North London. I can see why they were getting worried about that. And so as we stand, Barcelona and Real Madrid are still two teams that are very committed to this league. And I think there are still 5 teams that are in the league still, the 3 Italian teams, Juventus, AC Milan, Inter Milan. 7 teams, all the 6 English teams, as well as Atletico Madrid in Spain, have left. And we sort of sit now in this limbo where there are still people who really want this league to be created, but as of now, the fans have done enough to postpone this from happening at the very least right now. And so that's kind of what's going on. Jacob, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this.
This was one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard in any sports. Like, are you serious? Like like you said, a lot of these teams are like fan owned and like owned from like people and families, and it's very community based. Like the Maple Leafs are MLSE, but like Barcelona, there's like shares and fans, and so I can understand why fans would be extremely pissed. Perez, the president, was like, "This is going to save the sport," when in reality it was going to kill it. And it's so unfair to teams who try so hard to do so well just to be told they're not good enough because these guys are just running over them in the ground. I don't give a shit if you think you're that good. You're not good enough to make your own Super League, especially because all the fans hate it, and especially because all the other teams hate it. Now the teams that have backed out are going to be automatically hated in their respective league, and they're going to be targeted, and they're going to be beat up on. It was a stupid idea in the first place that should have never gone through, and the fact that there are still teams in there really pisses a lot of fans off, including myself.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And I mean, like you said, their sort of justification for this was they wanted to create a league with the best of the best where all the elite teams were playing each other. But that's clearly bullshit because I looked at the teams. Since the Super League was announced about just over a week ago to today, those 12 teams that were supposed to be in the Super League have played 23 games. They have 10 wins, 10 ties, 3 losses. So they're clearly not too good for the leagues that they're in because they've won 10 out of a possible 23 games. If they were better than everyone, they surely would be winning every single game or almost every single game. That's not the case. You have Arsenal, who are in this league, who are 9th place in their league. There are 8 teams in England that are doing better than Arsenal this season. No, the reason why they wanted to create this league is the same reason why the NFL is a closed league, why the NBA is a closed league. If you want to buy an NBA team, you have to hand over hundreds of millions of dollars. If you want to buy an NFL team, you'd probably need $1 billion. And so these owners want to protect their assets, right? Finishing 9th place in a league is going to hurt the owner's ability to make money. If that team is in a closed league where they can't get kicked out of the league, they're protected. Their value goes up. This is strictly a business decision that these owners wanted in order to protect their assets, because you have to remember that these owners, they look at their sports team as an asset, as a way to make money, as something that's worth something. They don't look at it the same way a fan does, where they look at it as a team that they cheer for and want to succeed. For an owner, sure, winning championships is nice, but as long as they can make money, they're satisfied. And
It's so stupid though.
yeah. And I think that the number one reason that speaks to this, and it's the main reason why the two sports that I love the most, I watch the most, are hockey and soccer. Jacob, when an NFL team wins the Super Bowl, who does the commissioner hand the trophy to first?
I believe it's the owner.
It's the owner. When an NBA team wins an NBA championship, who does the commissioner hand the trophy to first?
The owner.
When an MLB team wins the World Series, who do they hand the trophy to first?
That would be the owner.
When an NHL team or a soccer team wins a championship, who gets to hold the trophy up first?
The captain.
That's why I love hockey and soccer more. Full stop.
Yeah, it's more player based, and it really sucks that more teams like. I don't understand why the owner of the Lakers got to hold it last year instead of guys like LeBron, who deserved it, or AD. And then look at a couple years ago. Imagine in like 1999 or is it 2001 or something when the Colorado Avalanche won, and you can't give it to Ray Bourque, who had waited 22 years to win a cup, but the owner gets to hold it first. Like, imagine that.
Exactly, and that's because in these leagues, like people talk about, why can't the NHL have the same salaries as the NBA, the NFL? Because the NBA, the NFL, and the MLB are leagues designed around owners. They're designed around the billionaires who own the teams, and if their team does well, that's just an added bonus, and the fans will be there because they love the teams, they love the sports. But the reality is that the leagues are designed around the owners. Now the NHL is pivoting more and more towards that, and I understand that's how North American sports operate. It's a closed league, that will help the league, and I recognize that, but I hope that we keep some of those traditions, especially the captain getting to hold the trophy up first. In soccer, yes, the obviously ownership is important because you need to have a stable owner so that the club doesn't go bankrupt, all of that. Having good ownership is important. But in soccer, it's more about the team, it's more about the club, it's more about what it represents to the community, it's more about the fans. And like you said, and I was talking about it last week, and I'm glad that what ended up happening was true because there were rumors that German teams would start to join this league. In the end, all of the German teams rejected. And like I said last week, Germany has a 50+1% system, which means that the controlling share of all the German teams are fan-owned. You cannot buy a controlling share of a German soccer team. And I think that soccer should go in that direction. And England is looking at creating that. But that's why I love soccer, especially in Europe, because it is about the team, it is about the club, it is about the fans. It's less about the money. I'm not saying that the money and the ownership doesn't matter, because obviously it does everywhere. But it's more about the fans and it's more about the team, and it's less about the ownership than it is in North America. And we see it all the time, if I say Dallas Cowboys, the first thing that a lot of people are going to think about is Jerry Jones. When I say New England Patriots, you'll probably think of Tom Brady, but or Bill Belichick. Afterwards, you'll think of Robert Kraft.
Yeah.
You don't think about ownership in any of these other sports. Right?
Yeah, tell me the last time someone's like, the Toronto Maple Leafs. MLSC. No, it's like Matt Sundin, like the captain, John Tavares. If the Leafs win, he'll be the first one to lift it. It's never these guys from the big corporations because that's not the tradition.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the biggest, well, I won't say one of the biggest reasons because obviously I became a Penguins fan before I was aware of any of this. I became a Penguins fan because I was 4 years old and thought the Penguins skating with the hockey stick was the coolest logo I've ever seen in my life. And I think I picked pretty well. But one of the things I really respect about the Pittsburgh Penguins is we're owned by Mario Lemieux and Ron Burkle, but we're owned by Mario Lemieux. And I love that because it's almost like we're a complete fan sort of based team where the owner of our team, or the part owner of our team, because like I said, Ron Burkle is the majority owner in our team, but a minority owner in our team is like the biggest legend that of like the team has ever had.
Yeah.
And I love that because it does really make a difference where you can say, because how many teams get into fights with their ownership about whatever all
Right.
the time.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier in Pittsburgh to be like, I trust what we're doing at ownership because Mario Lemieux is there and he has a seat at the table and he cares about the team and he cares about, like, I'm not from Pittsburgh, so but I still understand what it means to the city, right?
Right.
And if you're a native, what do they call people from Pittsburgh?
Pardon?
I'm thinking, like, they're not Pittsburgh. I know they say Yinzer, but I feel like that's more like a slang term and not the official term for someone from Pittsburgh. I'll just say Yinzer. If you're a Yinzer from Pittsburgh, right? That's what they call themselves.
Okay.
I
Okay.
know
Whatever.
I know my
I've
thing.
never heard that term.
I know my lingo.
Okay.
If you're from Pittsburgh, right?
Mhm.
And because there was a time where they were like almost bankrupt and thinking of relocating the team. Now you have Mario Lemieux there. He literally saved the team from bankruptcy, becoming an owner. You trust that the Penguins are going to stay in Pittsburgh because of the way that ownership structure is, where we've literally seen how many relocations over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, the Jets are lucky they got a team back. Quebec City still looking for a hockey team.
That won't
Talk
happen.
to Seattle about basketball and see if they're not still pissed off about losing the Supersonics, and that was like more than a decade ago now. St. Louis is still desperate to get professional football back. Like, they loved the Rams. Oakland, one of the best fan bases in the NFL. There's not enough money in Oakland. Moved to Las Vegas.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I know, and I'm with you. Like, same thing with Colorado is they have Joe Sakic, who's won a cup with that team as the general manager, and they don't have to ever look at the Leafs. Brendan Shanahan, like, there's a lot of. I think the teams that are most successful have former players, former staff, coach, whatever, in the NHL that played there because they know how the game works and they know what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and I mean, before MLSE, like, Leafs fans hated their owners. Like Harold Ballard, everyone
Oh,
hated him.
I don't even want to talk about him.
Exactly. I mean, that's like ownership matters. Ownership matters. And we're seeing that the fans realize that in Europe, and I'm glad to see that there is tremendous pushback to the Super League. But yeah, I mean, I think that unless you have any final thoughts that you want to add there.
No, I mean, yeah, like the Leafs had a history of some pretty awful owners, so MLSD taking over was smart, and then going after guys like that, bringing like Shanahan as like a president was probably the best decision they could have made.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of hockey, let's keep it there and sort of talk about some stuff that's been going on around the league. And the first thing to mention is we have our first three teams that have clinched playoff spots.
Yep.
And that's partially because these teams have been very good this year, and it's partially because they play in an absolute trash division where the rest of the teams are absolute dog water. But yeah, congratulations to Colorado, Vegas, and Minnesota. Yes, you heard that right. The Minnesota Wild are the third team to clinch a playoff spot.
I mean, the way they played this season with Krill, with Kaprizov, has just been like, it's unreal. Like they've become a fun team to watch again.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm pretty much on record for calling the Minnesota Wild like the most
boring team to watch.
Not even the most boring team, but just like the most insignificant team because they're just always they play boring and then they're always a first round elimination. Well, you know what? Congratulations, Minnesota. You're going to get eliminated in the first round this year playing exciting hockey, which I'm not saying that sarcastically. Like, it's, at least like this is going to be a better season. Like, at least you're playing good hockey now. Right? Like you said, Kaprizov is a huge reason for that.
This is going to be probably the start of a good dynasty. And Kaprizov will probably, if he plays like this in the rest of his career, will probably be the best Minnesota Wild ever.
Oh, for sure. They have to lock him down. I don't know what his contract situation is like, but they need to lock him down.
Yeah, if he goes to another team, they're going to get absolutely, like, he's going to dominate them whenever he plays them. But Yeah, they're gonna have to play the Avalanche first, and I have the Avalanche winning the cup, and I think a lot of people do because of how well the Avalanche play. So good luck to Minnesota. Make this series interesting. 5 games is what I think that series will go to.
Well, that's actually one thing that I wanted to do today, and I guess we'll start with that's the no, that's the
That's
West
the
Division.
West Division.
That's the West Division. I guess we can start with the West Division, but yeah, what are if the season was or now that we're aware of where we are in the season,
Yeah.
you know, what do you think the playoff picture is looking like, and what do you think is going to happen? So, I mean, I guess in the West, you say Colorado's going to be the 2, Minnesota's going to be the 3,
Yeah.
and you have Colorado moving on. So that means Vegas will be the 1. Who do you have sneaking into that last playoff spot, and what do you think is going to happen there?
Probably Arizona. I don't think another team's gonna catch them. I think Arizona's in that division. Let me just pull up the standings.
Yeah, Arizona have a 2-point lead on St. Louis, and I think St. Louis have a game in hand right now. It's going to come down between the Coyotes and the Blues for that last spot to be swept by Vegas in that first round.
Remember what happened in that 7 kind of game series between the Blues and the Coyotes won that series? I think that's going to be the big game changer. Like, you remember that series where they had to play because everyone else was on COVID and the Blues?
Yeah, they played each other like 7 times in a row.
And the Coyotes won the series 4-3. So I think that one game was definitely the big difference maker, and I think the Coyotes are going to be able to stay ahead because I have more faith in Darcy Kemper than I do in Jordan Binnington.
I would agree with you there. I still think that St. Louis is a better all-around team, and I think they'll sneak into that 4 spot. So we're different there. I assume we're on the same page saying Vegas wins that series easily.
Whoever Vegas plays, they're going to win that series. It doesn't matter.
And then this gets to the big question, which is Vegas, Colorado, which I think everyone kind of realizes it's going to come down to Vegas, Colorado to get out of the West.
Yeah.
I mean, you just said Colorado's winning the Cup, so I'll let you explain why you think Colorado's got it.
I think Colorado, especially pulling in Devin Dubnyk, has really solidified themselves as a Cup contender. I'm not saying Devin Dubnyk is the game changer, but if you look at the teams overall, I think Colorado has a better overall team with guys like McKinnon and Landeskog, Grantanen, who's second in the league right now in goal scoring behind Austin Matthews. The defense, Cale Makar, Pietrangelo has gone cold, and Cale Makar has been hot. Same as Sam Girard, 31 points in their last 30 games. So it goes to show that I have more faith in the Avalanche than I do in Vegas.
All right. I actually have Vegas right now.
Okay.
And I have a couple of reasons why. First, while I agree that Dubnyk is a big upgrade for Colorado, and Grubauer, once again, I don't know what his status is going to be for the playoffs, but I still think Fleury-Laner is a better goaltending combo, and I have more faith in those guys, particularly in the playoffs, because we've seen both of those goalies do really good things in the playoffs, especially me watching Fleury.
Grubauer's been hurt a lot, and if he can stay healthy, I think he's better than both those goalies.
Okay, well, there you go. I think that's fair based on his performance this year.
Yeah.
I still lean Vegas in the net, and then I think that Vegas is just they're built for the playoffs. Like they just there's been so many Vegas games where I'll look at the box score and I'll see like Vegas wins 2-1 and they outshot their opponent 35-16, and I'm just like, how do you beat that? Because and I know they're not going to limit Colorado to 16 shots on goal. Like Colorado will have better offense. I just think that I think that this Vegas team is just built for the playoffs, and I haven't seen Colorado take that step in the playoffs. And I mean, once again, granted, this could be the year that they do that, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they did. But because of that, I have to narrowly lean Vegas.
Last year they had like 4 goalies, and Hutchinson was like the savior, or had to be the savior. Come on, they could have easily beat Dallas in that. Dallas was the day I was Dallas. They could have easily beat Dallas in that series. You say Vegas is built for the playoffs. I say Colorado's built for the Cup.
Oh, there you go. And I mean, once again, I don't think there's a wrong answer here.
Yeah.
But I mean, it'll be a phenomenal series, and I'll definitely watch if it ends up being that. Although, watch the fucking Minnesota Wild beat the Avs in 7 or something.
Oh, I'll be pissed off. I'm gonna get shades of 2014 again.
Yeah, so there's the West division, which I think is kind of the most set in stone, assuming three teams have already clinched the playoff spot. Let's pivot to the North, because I think this is the next division that's kind of set in stone in terms of we kind of know where the teams are going to fall and whatnot. Do you want to go first with the North, or do you want me to shit on Toronto and then you go?
Go ahead and shit on Toronto, and I'll defend them with my life.
I'm not gonna shit on. I can't shit on Toronto. Like I have to be realistic here. I have Toronto 1, Edmonton 2, Winnipeg 3, Montreal 4.
Oh, you have Edmonton over Winnipeg.
Yeah, I think Edmonton will jump them. They're like tied in the standings right now. They're neck and neck, and I just think I have Edmonton winning the playoff series. So if I have Edmonton winning the playoff series, I assume that they're gonna surpass them down the stretch here. Because I literally think they're either tied or separated by 1 point. So it's so close. And yeah, like I said, I mean, this is the year where Toronto and Edmonton need to take that step. For Edmonton, it's win a playoff series.
Yeah.
And for Toronto, it's win more
playoffs.
than one playoff series.
Yeah.
But let's just start with one. I'm not fully sold on Edmonton just because they're literally a 3.5 man team.
Did you know
2.5 man team?
Did you know Mike Smith left practice in discomfort the other day?
That's the thing. Like, there's so many question marks around this team. Like, I can't. I know McDavid's only one person, and Draisaitl's only one person. Like, when I say 2.5 person team, I literally mean there's McDavid, there's Draisaitl, and then there's Tyson Barrie passing the puck to them from behind his own net and getting assists. Although, full credit to Tyson Barrie, he's been phenomenal this season. He's on my fantasy team. He's raking in power play points for me. It's phenomenal. But, I mean, I still can't bet against them because I haven't seen, like, Hellebuck has not been elite this year. He's been good, but he's not been elite. Now, granted, he could steal a series still, and I recognize that. The Winnipeg offense has been solid, but there's still so many question marks defensively where I think that if Connor McDavid's going to tear up a team in a playoff series, Winnipeg's the perfect team for him to do that.
Oh, yeah. He could definitely capitalize on a lot of Winnipeg mistakes. Especially with Winnipeg losing 2 in a row to the Leafs. Did you watch the game last night or no?
I did not.
So, Winnipeg looks fed up, and they don't look like anything is working on, like, they're firing on all cylinders, but they're all firing on like, bad. Like, they're all pissed off. And Ehlers was mad, Wheeler was mad, Scheifele was mad, Hellebuck was mad. Scheifele was benched in the third because of his play.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with, like, going back to, like, the whole Vegas thing when I say they're built for the playoffs, what I mean is, like, my big thing for playoff teams is I look at a team and I'm like, can they play close checking, hard fought, 2-1 win, 3-2 win game? And I look at Edmonton, and obviously the answer is no. But when I look at this series between Edmonton and Winnipeg, I think, well, if any playoff series is going to finish in a 6-5 game every single game, it's going to be this one, based on the way that Winnipeg is built.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm going to go Edmonton, because, you know, there are a few teams in the league that you do not want to get into a track meet with. Edmonton is certainly one of them. Yeah, and I wouldn't be shocked if, like, the Oilers win this series in 6 games and McDavid has, like, 17 points for whatever reason in this series.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but, you know, here's where I'm actually going to throw it up. So you said it was Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Montreal?
Yes.
I think it's going to be Toronto, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Calgary. Montreal has done this every year. They start off really well, and then they shit the bed. And guess what they're doing? They're shitting the bed. And I think with Calgary winning so much recently, it's only a matter of time before they take over Montreal, like for the last playoff spot.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. Like, I picked Calgary not just to make the playoffs, but I picked Calgary to come out of this division in the playoffs at the beginning of the season. They were my bold pick. I wanted to go all in on them. Obviously, they've really disappointed. I wouldn't be surprised if Calgary did take that spot, but I mean, like, I picked them at the beginning of the year and they've let me down. I don't want to pick them again. I think Montreal might do enough, but yeah, Calgary could definitely get there. But so before we get into that Toronto series, do you also have Edmonton advancing, or do you have Winnipeg knocking out Edmonton then?
It's going to come down to goaltending, and I think Connor Hellebuck will steal a game. I think Winnipeg will probably win, just because they have more of a complete team than Edmonton. Like you said, they have McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, sure. Mike Smith if he's healthy, but I don't know about that. Tyson Berry, and that's probably about it. Well, I have more faith in the Winnipeg forwards and defensemen than I do with Edmonton.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think that's another really tight series. So then I have Toronto, Montreal. You have Toronto, Calgary.
Yeah,
Um,
I would love. I would love. Oh, don't get me wrong. I would love Toronto, Montreal.
I mean, from a fan's perspective, yes. If you're a Leafs fan, you want Calgary because,
Well, yeah,
like,
probably.
I think obviously Toronto were the huge favorites either way, but I think Toronto, Montreal, like, there's something about Toronto, Montreal where Montreal steps up to the plate and Montreal will give you guys a much harder challenge because of the rivalry than a team like Calgary will. Either way, I'm picking the Leafs to move on, but I think especially with everything surrounding the Leafs of like the pressure of not winning a playoff round in 16 years, this is their best opportunity to do so. They're supposed to be like the dominant team in this division.
Mhm.
They're now, and so there's a lot of pressure there. Now you add on the fact that you're playing your most bitter rivals. There's even more pressure there. And I think for Montreal, like Montreal literally, they're good for like one huge upset every couple of years, right? Like they knocked out Pittsburgh last year in the qualifying round. If you go back a couple of years, they knocked out Boston one year where like Boston were absolutely dominant. I think they pushed, was it the Rangers to like 7 games a couple of, like going back like probably
Yeah,
6 or 7 years
yeah. A
now.
couple of years ago they did.
So Montreal can play up to an opponent certainly. I think Toronto should still be able to win, but I think I think they would be able to beat Calgary in like 4 or 5. I think Montreal could push them to 6 or 7.
I mean, at the end of the day, I have all biases aside, I do believe Toronto is still the best team in this division by far. They've been in first for basically the entire season, and uh, I mean, I think Toronto's just built for Cup this year. Like, I just think it's Cup or bust. And I don't want to say the team's gonna blow up if they get out in the first round again, but it's Cup or bust this year. And I think with all the veterans they have and all the playoff experience, like Nick Foligno when he came to this team, they just seemed to play significantly better. They dominated these two Edmonton games after getting destroyed in Calgary and Vancouver. So I think he really brings a huge playoff a morale boost to the team that I think they were kind of missing before. So I think the Leafs are still built for the cup, and I still think they'll get there. I still do. I still think they'll get the cup.
I mean, absolutely, they are built for that, and I certainly think that they'll get out of this division. I think like the other Canadian teams have shown glimpses, but they just haven't shown enough. I think Toronto gets out of the North. And like I said, I'm sure you agree as a Leafs fan, but also, being unbiased, like the Leafs, like you said, the Leafs are the best team in this division. I definitely agree with you there. It's just a matter of can they deliver in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's a matter of will they choke again and be the laughing stock of the league, or will they finally do something and make it to the finals in which they're supposed to win the cup this year?
Yeah, let's pivot on to the Central now,
Yeah.
where there are also sort of three dominant teams, and then there's a fight for that 4 spot.
Oh boy.
Uh, so I'm interested. Who do you have 1, 2, 3 between Carolina, Tampa, Florida, and then who do you have getting that 4th spot between Nashville and Dallas?
Oh man, like Carolina and Florida are so good this year. Like it's ridiculous. I think it's in the order it is right now: Carolina, Florida, Tampa. I think it's gonna stay that way. I would really love to see it, the Battle of Tampa of Florida. So if they could stay where they are right now, I'd be very happy with that. Like a rivalry that needs to happen. And then I think it'll probably be. Oh man, I don't know. I really don't know because the Blackhawks are still there too. They're right up there with them. Um, oh man, I'd probably say Nashville is going to stay where they are. They seem to be playing pretty well this year, despite everyone expecting them to be kind of a weird, not playoff team. Like they've kind of gone against what the moral of the story is, and they said, "Screw you." Pecorine is going to play great. UC Soros is going to play great, and I think everyone else on. I think here's the thing with Nashville is the players who weren't supposed to play well are playing significantly great. Like, look at Grimaldi. Look at who else is on that team? Like, guys when Forsberg can't produce, which we all know is the best player on that team, other guys are producing for him. So I think that's why Nashville's going to be over Dallas.
I agree with you. I just have one change in the seeding.
Yeah.
I have Carolina, Tampa, Florida. I think Tampa will jump Florida.
Florida's a game and a half ahead of them.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm aware
Okay.
of that. Yeah, I still think it will be Tampa, Florida in that playoff series, and I really want to pick Dallas because, they made the finals last year, but they're very injured. Uh, it just looks like this isn't the year. Like everything that could go against them has gone against them this year,
Yeah.
and sometimes that happens. I mean, you look at their game last night; they were out shooting Detroit 41-6, and were down 1-0 at the second intermission. Now they went on to win that game 2-1 in overtime, but
Man.
41-6 were the shots on goal. It was 1-0 Detroit.
Yeah.
And
Jonathan
I think,
Bernier's played great last night.
oh yeah, he was phenomenal. I think that just sums up Dallas' season, where even when everything is going right, it's still not working out for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, not that it matters because Carolina will absolutely annihilate whoever ends up with that spot.
Yeah.
My big question to you is, will Florida pull it off? I mean, I have Tampa getting out of this division still. I mean, when they add Kucherov in the playoffs, they're just way too good. I really hope that anyone else comes out of this division. I really do. I'm cheering for Carolina. I'm cheering for Florida. I'm I'm picking Tampa.
Uh, I think Florida has what it takes. Do I think they'll do it? I don't know, but I would love to see the Battle of Tampa maybe in the division, the series to get out of this division. Like a final hoorah, who is really the best team in Florida? And I would love to see it, and I would love to be able to watch that because I think that could be a rivalry in the making, especially with things going back to normal next season. So I think that Florida will come out of this division because I think everything is just working and it's firing on all cylinders, and there seems to be nothing that's going wrong with the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the toughest one to pick because
Yeah.
there are really three teams that are capable of getting out. And yeah, like I said, I really hope someone else can do it. You always love seeing new teams compete. It would be great to see a Florida, especially because Carolina did have a bit of a deep run last year. So it would be great to see Florida sort of put it all together and go for a run. Now, the East, I think this is where we could have very, very different predictions.
Yeah.
And so I'll let you go first.
So I still have Boston missing the playoffs. I just don't think the Rangers are going to catch up to them. That was a bold prediction you didn't think I would make, but they're technically still in striking distance of missing the playoffs. Just saying. Um, Obviously, I think they'll make the playoffs now. You called me
Well,
crazy for saying
it's
that.
better than me. I had Washington missing the playoffs, and they're first in the division.
Yeah, you. I don't know why you would say Washington missing the playoffs. I'm sorry. Um, can we just take 5 minutes to shit on the Flyers, please?
I mean,
Because
as a Penguins fan, I'm never going to say no. So go ahead.
okay, what the hell? What went wrong besides everything? You guys were expected to make the finals. You guys were expected to make it out of this division, and you guys can't even hit 50 points. You can't. You're not gonna make the playoffs. And once they say that you've been mathematically eliminated, I'm going to laugh. And because you guys, the Flyers had so much potential, and they threw it away. Especially after last year's playoffs, everyone expected them to do so well, and they did nothing. And they've done nothing but fail. They've done nothing but disappoint, and they've done nothing but show everyone that they're an overrated team. They are not the best team in Philadelphia, and they never will be the best team in Philadelphia if they keep playing this way. Carter Hart is overrated. People were calling him Carey Price, the next Carey Price, the prodigy Carey Price. Brian Elliott cannot save this team. I don't know what happened to Sean Couturier or They put Shane Gostisbehere on waivers earlier in the season. Like, nothing went right for this team, and they're overrated. And I want people to stop saying that they're a good team when they play like absolute dog shit. Go ahead, Labi.
Yeah, I mean, as a Penguins fan, I'm never gonna cheer for the Flyers. On paper, they have talent, but like you said, for whatever reason, it's never materialized this season. And you know, goaltending is a very difficult position. To get stable goaltending for a team for a long period of time is the most difficult thing that you can possibly do. And as I've mentioned before, I think Rangers fans are realizing just how lucky they were to have Henrik Lundqvist in front of their crease for the past decade.
Yeah. Don't take away from what is it?
Shesterkin.
And Gorgiev. They're a good duo, but Henrik Lundqvist, they probably took for granted.
Well, and that's the point, like Hart. I'm not saying Hart's not a good goalie. Obviously, the guy has talent, but it's about being able to be a consistent number one goalie. There are very few consistent number one goalies that exist in the National Hockey League at any point in time. Right. If you have one, that is huge, especially now that we're doing playoff predictions and we look at, what we say about Winnipeg, Connor Hellebuyck. Yeah. They have a consistent number one starting goalie, and that's why you have to sort of double take every time you bet against Winnipeg, especially in the playoffs. You have to keep in mind in the back of your head that they have a guy like Connor Hellebuyck. Yeah. And so it's really tough to get that good goaltending, and especially with a guy as young as Carter Hart is. What is he, 23?
Something like that, 22.
Yeah, it's tough. And yeah, like for whatever reason, the team's absolutely fallen off a cliff. They're not getting production. Shane Gostisbehere put up 70 points in his rookie year. He's been nowhere near that level, and he was already not the best sort of defensive defenseman to begin with. So if he's not producing offensively, he's kind of a liability in certain respects. Couturier is not the guy who won the Selke last year. He's still playing well, but he's not playing at an elite level. I mean, the young guys just aren't developing for whatever reason. You're right. It's a very bleak season for the Flyers, and I think that they're honestly, like, between them and Buffalo, they're the two most disappointing teams this year. And I think the only reason you can make the argument for Philly is because people expected Buffalo. Well, it's probably still Buffalo because there were people who were expecting them to do kind of well this year and they just didn't. But the expectation for the Flyers were, like you said, to win the division, to go deep in the playoffs, and they're going to fall short of even making the playoffs.
It's disappointing. And I still think Philadelphia is an overrated team. I think people gave them too much credit for one good playoff series last year, and they lost that opportunity, and now look where they are. They're a laughing stock of the league.
Yeah, it's tough to make those playoffs consistently. That Red Wings streak of, 23 straight seasons?
25 years in a row.
25 years in a row. That's ridiculous. The Penguins this year, it's going to be their 15th year in a row, which is the longest active streak.
The Leafs will be 5 years in a row, and that's like crazy to hit.
Well, yeah, the Leafs 5 years in a row is still a huge accomplishment. But no, let's get into these Eastern Division predictions. So, who do you have seeded 1, 2, 3, 4, and then what are you thinking in terms of those rounds?
I think it'll be let me just pull it. The Islanders are third right now, right?
Yes, they are. So but the Capitals, the Islanders, and I think all four teams are separated by like 3 points. It's ridiculously tight.
So I think it'll be Penguins in first, Capitals in second, Islanders in third, and Boston in fourth.
Okay, I have Washington 1, Pittsburgh 2, Islanders 3, Boston 4.
Oh, Pittsburgh Islanders series would be great to watch again.
Yeah, so you have Pittsburgh Islanders in the first round.
No, I have Pittsburgh-Boston in the first round.
Oh, you have Pittsburgh-Boston? Oh, sorry, wait. I have Washington 1, Pittsburgh 2, Boston 3, Islanders 4. So we have the same series just flipped around because you have Pittsburgh-Boston as the 1-4, I have Pittsburgh-Boston as the 2-3, and vice versa. So it's perfect. It ends up with the same series. So who do you have Pittsburgh-Boston, and who do you have Washington-New York?
Probably and then it goes back to good goaltending. Tuukka Rask versus DeSmith and Jari. I think he's better than both those goaltenders. Um, don't take it personally. It's just a fact. Um, I don't know, but Pittsburgh, like, you can't count Pittsburgh out. They've been able to seriously pull some crazy stuff out of their ass, and I think it'll go to 7 games, but I'm gonna give Boston the tilt here, and I don't want to say that as a Leaf fan. That really pains me. But I think Boston's gonna probably win that series in 7.
And then Washington, New York.
Probably Washington. Um, yeah, probably Washington because Washington's just overall um a better team than the Islanders. The only way I can see the Islanders winning is if the young goaltending and Sorokin and Varlamov can take it away from Samsonov and Vanacek. That's the only way I can see the Islanders beating the Caps. Otherwise, the Caps are probably going to win that series.
All right, this is very interesting because I have completely opposite predictions.
Really?
I have the Islanders beating the Capitals.
Oh wow.
Just because,
Okay.
yeah, I think the Islanders have better goaltending. Varlamov's had a very quietly good year this season,
He's had
and
many of those.
yeah, yeah. And just once again, I think the system that they play with the Trotz as their head coach, I'm never gonna bet against that.
Well,
And
hold up. Hold on. Before you continue, we look at
yeah,
systems. Look at what happened with Columbus. That was supposed to be a system that was supposed to be successful, and
yeah,
they're
yeah.
eliminated.
But the thing is, the Islanders have proven that their system is successful in the playoffs. Columbus hasn't proved that.
That's true.
I think that the Islanders have proved that their system is more effective than any other system. I see your point, and I do take your point.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're right. It's very risky to be picking people based on a system,
Systems.
picking
Yeah.
teams based on a system. But I mean, once again, I've been watching a lot of East Division hockey, not just this year, but Metro Division in previous years. The Islanders are a very, very tough team. And as much as the Capitals have been doing really well this year, and I can't take that away from them, I still just don't see how they can be a top team. So I have the Islanders. And then I actually kind of agree with you in the sense where I think Boston's actually the toughest matchup for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think
I
so
think
too.
Boston's the toughest matchup for Pittsburgh. I think that I would much rather play Washington or the Islanders in the first round. I want to avoid Boston at all costs.
I mean, like, if you look at those 4 teams, I'd say Boston probably has the best goalie in Tuukka Rask.
Uh,
I'd probably say
yes,
I'd probably say
yes,
they have the best goaltender of those 4 teams. I'm concerned on the consistency of him because he's
yeah,
been injured and he's missed time.
yeah, and I think that also the way the teams match up, the toughest matchup for Pittsburgh is Boston because Boston the first two lines can play the speed and skill game, and then the bottom two lines with their checking and physicality. I think Boston's the toughest matchup for Pittsburgh. With that being said, I think Pittsburgh is playing the best hockey they've played all season. I think the goaltending has finally, found some stability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that the fact that we've been able to be this good all season with the amount of injuries that we have, Malkin should be back for the playoffs. Kapanen just came back. Tanev might be good to go at the start of the playoffs. That's a huge question mark. If we get Tanev back, that's phenomenal. I think
Yeah.
that this Penguins team, fully healthy, is the most talented team in this division. And so, as much as the Boston matchup worries me the most, I have Pittsburgh winning, and then I have Pittsburgh getting out of this division. And obviously, as a Penguins fan, I'm going to say that, but just the last 5 games, this is the best I've seen this team play all season long. I think Crosby's hit that sort of other level. 16th consecutive season of at least a point per game. The only other player in NHL history to do that is Wayne Gretzky. He did it for 19 straight seasons.
Right.
Crosby's playing at MVP level. Like, once again, we will probably do award predictions in another episode. I'm not saying he's going to win it. McDavid is the rightfully deserving winner of the MVP this year.
Yes.
But I think that if I had to pick finalists for the Hart Trophy, I think the 3 finalists are McDavid, McKinnon, and Crosby. If I had to pick the
McDavid,
three.
McDavid, McKinnon, and Mick Crosby. That's what we got going on.
Yeah, exactly. Like Crosby's at that level. Sullivan is a foot like what Sullivan's been able to get out of like these AHL guys that we've had to bring up into the team with a fully healthy team. I think Pittsburgh should get out of this division. I'm not saying anything crazy like we're going to win the Stanley Cup. I think that I have Tampa, Vegas, Pittsburgh, and Toronto coming out of the four divisions. Even if I take if I replace Tampa with Florida, if I replace Vegas with Colorado, because those are the teams you picked, I think that realistically Pittsburgh is weaker than a lot of those teams, and I would probably pick a Colorado, a Vegas, a Tampa ahead of Pittsburgh. But I think with respect to the East Division, I think Pittsburgh's the best team. So I'm not saying anything ridiculous like we're going to win the Stanley Cup, but I think we should be able to get out of our division, and we should be able to challenge those teams that I think are better than us. And I think it's certainly within the realm of possibility, because once you get out of your division, you're only 2 series wins away. But I do believe in Pittsburgh this year. I really think we're playing our best hockey, and it's going well.
Yeah, 100%. Pittsburgh wasn't expected to be as well as they were this year, and they have done absolutely great.
But you have Boston, Washington, so just for you to finish your point, who do you have coming out of this division?
Probably Washington. I think if they have another chance at being the best and winning the cup, it's probably this year, a lot like the Leafs. But yeah, other than that, I think there's definitely time for teams who can make upsets to get into the playoffs and really mess someone else's chance up for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, this is just a fun exercise because we know we have 3 teams in the West clinched. It looks like the 3 teams in the Central will clinch any day now. It looks like in the North, in the Central, and in the West, it looks like the only spot that's up for grabs is that 4 seed.
Yeah, like the Leafs will clinch soon.
Yeah, like I think we agree that it's between Calgary and Montreal in the North. It's between Nashville, Dallas, and Chicago in the Central. It's between St. Louis and Arizona in the West. And I think we all agree that none of those teams, once again, like you said, any team can upset any team at any given time. I don't think anyone expected Chicago and Montreal to win those qualifying round series last year.
Yeah,
so
and same with Columbus.
Exactly. Oh, right. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. I can't believe I missed an opportunity to shit on the Leafs. Come on.
Yeah,
that's my job.
Don't worry, you're welcome. I can do it for you.
There you go. So I'm definitely not counting any of these teams out, but I think we all agree that when it comes to predictions, we're all picking all those teams to lose in that first round. And then in the East, it looks like those 4 teams are set in stone. It's just a matter of what the seeding is going to be like and what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely a useful thing to start thinking about the playoffs. I mean, most teams only have between, I think, 7 and 9 games left in the season. There's 2 weeks left in the NHL regular season. We're getting real close to playoff time.
I'm so excited for playoff hockey. Oh, my God.
Yeah, so any final points that you want to end this podcast on?
We need a Leafs-Montreal series. We do.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are critical of the playoff format. I think Leafs fans, especially given the fact that they have Tampa and Boston in their division normally, which I think is a fair criticism. But honestly, I love these. I love the way that the playoffs are done this in normal years, this year too, with just the different divisions. Like you said, it makes it easier to create these rivalries. I mean, why do Toronto and Boston have a rivalry? I mean, obviously, they kind of have one historically somewhat, but it's mainly because they've played in the playoffs a lot of times. Why does Pittsburgh and Washington have a rivalry? It's partially because they created one because Crosby and Ovechkin, but that would have died out if they hadn't met each other in the playoffs so many times.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that, like you said, this is a phenomenal opportunity to see some of these rivalries. The fact that Pittsburgh-Washington playoff series is possible, the fact that a Montreal-Toronto playoff series is possible, the fact that a Tampa-Florida playoff series is possible. Like, these are all opportunities to create some real big rivalries. And I mean, we've seen even in the recent years, we've seen two teams that you would have never have thought would have had a rivalry create a vicious rivalry. I think the biggest example is Vegas and San Jose now have a tremendous rivalry. And who the hell would have thought that Vegas and San Jose would create a rivalry? You give them a couple of playoff series, and all of a sudden, teams are going to start hating each other. And so, yeah, I think, like you said, a Toronto-Montreal series would be phenomenal. And, I'm sure that because of this divisional system and because the way the regular season has worked out, these teams that are meeting each other in the playoffs will have already played each other 8 times.
I mean, so go back to 2017. The Leafs could have played Ottawa in the first round had they won their last game of the season. Take that in.
Yeah. I mean, once again, Battle of Ontario, that's another huge rivalry. But yeah, if these playoff series go to a game 7, that will be the 15th time that these teams will have played each other this year. There's gonna be some bad blood, no matter who's playing each other. There's gonna be some bad blood because when you play someone that many times, you find something.
Oh yeah, well if you watched the game last night, Ehlers and Thornton went at it. They went at it. And they would talk and chirping each other in the penalty box. Like, it just goes to show it's a different atmosphere in playoffs. Like, last night's game was so much like a playoff atmosphere. And it was so much fun to watch.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect ending point here. I think probably 2 weeks from now will be our official NHL Playoff Preview podcast. So keep your eyes peeled for that at the end of the regular season. Neither of us can wait for that to start.
No, I know. And we'll go more in depth on like the team's strengths and weaknesses this year.
Yeah, absolutely. But with that, we thank you for listening to another episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. So thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like or a 5-star review or share the podcast if you enjoyed it. All your support is greatly appreciated. Sidney Crosby for the Selke 2021, and we'll see you next week.